Welcome to the Organic Matrix. In today's episode, we're going to be having a recap on a past podcast episode I had with my friend Randy Young. I met Randy Young while working with the company called Unavailable, and during our entrepreneurial journey, we became close friends and we started a mastermind group with our friend Ron. With today's discussion, Randy's going to go into how his father influenced the way he treats his current relationships, and I'm going to go into the impact of lacking a father figure. So, we're going to be talking about some daddy issues and it's going to be juicy, so stick to the end to see how the cookie crumbles.
Hey Sam, see, my name is Randy Young. I am from originally and still in Sioux City, Iowa, and it's been a pleasure meeting you, Sam. And thank you for having me on today.
And I'm very grateful for Live Ultimate, for it being a platform that I was able to meet you on.
Yes, and so am I. And it's just, you're such an inspiration, and I still consider you, not to be not only a good friend, but also a coach, as so knowledgeable about everything. And of course, you're my to-go person when I have a question.
Make a joke with Edward, my boyfriend, because I'm like, I think I know why all of my friends are like 60-year-old men, and it's because I didn't know my dad. I'm getting all of the male influence through friendship, and honestly, it's great because you can't. Like my parents taught me a lot, but you can't learn everything from a woman. Like there's men and women. Like there's two different experiences that we need to like have exposure to. How do you know what a good man is if you don't know a good man? Like.
Well, exactly, and that's what you were. I got that advantage, coming from a home that, my mom and dad were married for 50 years. And, my dad was a truck driver. He was gone all the time, but I knew what he expected out of me. And, I just knew from watching him and just watching the way people treated him and how he would just light up a room when he came in because, the respect that he had for everybody had for him, that, it just, I just thought, man, if I could just, be half the man that he was, in my lifetime, that, I'd be very happy,
Wow.
So, and then growing up with three sisters, I kind of got a feminine side too, because, it's, so I just kind of got the both of both worlds of, learning how to respect women, how to, treat, women. And it was just, I don't know, I just had the advantage that a lot of people don't have.
While getting to know Randy, I realized that I do have a pattern of finding older mentors that are mostly men. And in this clip, I joke about making friends with older men as a dad joke because I didn't have a dad growing up. But as I made that joke, I came to the realization that, there could be some truth there. So I decided to do some research. So a little bit about my background is I come from a loving home. I had two parents my whole life, but I had lesbian parents, so happy Pride in June. And I didn't lack when it comes to having a home and love and support, and I have sisters. But what I did lack was having a male influence in our household, because the only male influence in our household used to dress in drag. So he, not conventional male figure, but nonetheless. Here's a few things I learned during my research about what traits can be present if a child grows up without a father figure. Yeah. What is the impact of growing up without a father figure? It could be hard navigating life if you're growing up without a father figure. Your self-esteem and sense of identity could suffer greatly. In addition, your relationships with others may also suffer if you don't understand how to communicate effectively with men. I grew up without a male figure in my household. Instead, I grew up with two loving mothers. You may feel profound loss. You may feel a sense of betrayal. You may feel a sense of loss of identity. And you may feel a sense of a loss in role model. You may feel a sense of loss of security. You may question your identity. If you don't have a father figure in your life, you may feel lost, confused, and alone. You may question who you are. What is your identity? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? How should I define my goals and ambitions in life? What do I want to do with my life? In my experience, I questioned the parts of me that felt alien to the culture presented to me in my household. The feeling of not fitting in was apparent to me. I felt like I struggled to relate with my family members, and I would catch myself wondering if I was more like my father since I struggled to find my sense of belonging within my family. Your relationships may suffer. Men, both fathers and husbands, play a crucial role in establishing boundaries for children and encouraging them to take responsibility for their actions. Without this influence, children are more likely to be raised by mothers who are overprotective and underinvolved. Girls may have a difficulty forming a healthy romantic relationship with men as they get older if they do not have a strong father figure during childhood. Fatherless girls often lack the guidance needed to understand how men think, leading them into unhealthy situations throughout their life. For example, they may become sexually promiscuous at a young age because they don't know when it's appropriate or necessary to have sex with someone, if at all. They may also struggle with pregnancy and childbirth issues because they haven't had a role model to teach them what it means to be a father or a husband. In my experience, I felt clueless about how to behave around men. I was curious about them, I felt unsure about what behaviors were appropriate, and I had no concept of what could have been interpreted as suggestive. I felt inadequate, which came to haunt me when I moved away from home when I started college. You tend to be attracted to unavailable men. One of the most common ways this manifests is your attraction to unavailable men. They're married or in a relationship, or aren't emotionally available because they're not ready for a relationship. Or even worse, maybe they're not prepared for a relationship with you. In other words, when you don't have an example of what love looks like from afar, it's easy to get confused about what it looks like up close. So for example, you might think if someone says, "I can't commit," then that means I'm just not into you. Or maybe he needs more time before he commits. But then again, perhaps he's just never going to commit at all. The reality is, sometimes men will come along who are genuinely interested in being with someone, but who don't feel like they're ready yet, either emotionally or practically. And that's okay. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It just means that right now, it isn't their time yet, and possibly never will be. You have difficulty forgiving. Forgiveness is hard. This is true of many things in life, but it's especially true when you're trying to forgive someone who did something terrible to you, whether they abused you physically or emotionally, whether they abandoned you or never returned after they left, or both. Forgiving the person in question can be difficult, but it's important to ignore them. Otherwise, their actions will continue to affect your life in negative ways, and they may cause more harm than good for yourself and others around you. To begin with, let me explain what forgiveness does not mean. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. Forgiveness does not mean excusing what happens or it happened. Forgiving does not mean giving up on personal growth because someone else did something wrong. You may not know how to communicate with men effectively. The absence of a father can make you feel confused and intimidated by men, even the father of your children. Without the example of a healthy male communication, you may have trouble identifying what is appropriate behavior and what isn't. This could lead to feelings of shame or embarrassment when interacting with men. which can impact your relationships down the road. It's also possible that you don't understand how to express anger or love in healthy ways as an adult because no one has ever taught you how it's done. You may be afraid of abandonment. You may be afraid of abandonment, and you may worry that whoever you love will leave you or that you will be left alone. You may fear being abandoned by your parents, friends, other loved ones, and romantic partners. You could also have trouble trusting others or yourself because of this fear. For example, you might have the urge to depend on someone else for all of your needs and desires, yet feel like no one can provide you what you need most: consistent love and attention. So it's safer not to trust anyone at all than to risk getting hurt again by letting someone in too close, which is what happens when we allow ourselves to feel safe with another person. This can make it hard for people who didn't grow up with a masculine role model to form satisfying relationships later in life. They feel unworthy of love because they believe they don't deserve affection from others, let alone sexual pleasure. And sadly, I relate to this a lot. I definitely struggle with letting things go. Relationships are unstable, chaotic, or they're too controlled and predictable. As a child, you either had no father figure or a negative one. If your father was absent, you probably had more than one stepfather, and the lack of consistency in your life makes it hard for you to trust people and develop healthy relationships with them. This leads to instability in your trust in your relationships, or having too many unstable relationships at once that never seem to work out. If your father was there but he wasn't good at his job or didn't know how to be an effective parent, this can also affect how well you relate with others in life. People who grow up with an abusive or neglectful male figure often overcompensate by being hyper-responsible when they become adults themselves, but they're unable to get close enough with anyone else because they have unresolved issues from their childhoods that prevent them from trusting anyone else eternally, especially men. You don't know how to express anger or love appropriately. You may suppress them altogether or tell them inappropriately through yelling or getting physical. You don't know how to express anger or love appropriately. You may suppress them altogether or express them inappropriately through yelling or getting physical. You're more likely to be bullied. According to a study in American Psychological Association, boys who grew up without fathers are more likely to be involved in violent crime and substance abuse as adults. They also tend to have lower self-esteem and poorer grades in school. Your belief system is distorted, which leads to negative thinking, self-loathing, low self-esteem, and low self-worth. You have an overactive imagination that can become detrimental to your mental health. These factors may stifle your creativity, and you may experience feelings of depression or anxiety. You cannot make decisions because you're afraid of making the wrong choice and being alone forever. You may find yourself repeating history, dating men similar to your father because it seems familiar, even though it isn't healthy for you or them. Your view of the opposite sex is based on misinformation that can lead you to making poor dating choices and hurtful decisions that damage your life and the lives of others. Your view of the opposite sex is based off the misinformation that can lead you to poor dating choices and hurtful decisions that damage your life and the lives of others. You may be afraid of men because you have been hurt by them before. You may also believe that all men are abusive, leading you to choose unavailable men who will continue to abuse you. It's challenging for those who didn't grow up with a father figure in their lives to understand how to communicate with men or express anger correctly, so they often turn towards unhealthy methods like physical violence or verbal abuse when they're upset. If you feel like you fit into a lot of these concepts and you can empathize with the struggles of this post, then here's the solution. We have to find a way to fulfill this role within ourselves. Yes, I know we all want a magic answer that will solve and fix our problems, our hurts and our worries, but when it comes down to it, we need to be the parents for ourselves that we always wish we had. And don't worry, you will find other people that will fit this void for you. For me, that's my friend Randy and Ron. For other people, it could be a teacher. It could be a role model that inspires you. It can even be a therapist or a support group. And it's important to put yourself out there so that you can see that there are men and women out there that are going to be good teachers, good role models, and very supportive. As long as you're honest and open with yourself and your needs, there's going to be people out there that are going to be beside you through thick and thin. Now, personally, growing up in the LGBT community, I always understood that blood is not thicker than water. And there's going to be people that you meet in life that are going to be more supportive than your blood relatives, and those are the people that I see as family. If this hits you right in the heart chakra like it does for me, and I just want to let you know that you're not alone. This is a big topic, and I've only touched upon a couple of sections within this topic. Finding the right male mentor can make a serious difference in your life, but don't settle for less. When finding a mentor, make sure to take everything with a grain of salt. There are people out there that do prey upon people who are a little bit more naive in this area, and I've had my fair share with this experience, so I just want to let you know to take everything with a grain of salt and find your own principles and values before you look to someone to inspire some within you. That's super important, to know your boundaries before you start looking for a mentor. If you think I missed anything for this conversation regarding daddy issues, feel free to drop them down into the comments below. I would love to hear what your experience is like growing up without a father and how you learned how to cope with it and what you took from that experience. Happy Pride, and if you found this video insightful and helpful and you resonated with it, feel free to click the like button below and share this episode with a friend you think that can relate to finding mentors and daddy issues. Thank you for joining me on the Organic Matrix, and I look forward to seeing you on the next download.